I have 4 apps on my Mac which I use all the time to organize my tasks, my time, and my thoughts. And these apps are Notion, Things, Day One, and Spark. And the goal of this video is not to really show you the tools, but rather the ways that I'm using these apps. And maybe out of the 15 habits that I'm going to show you, maybe 2 or 3 will stick with you. Right now, I'm deep into the jungle of productivity videos. I have to say this is a very hostile environment and I do not know if this video will make it. I'm Ben. I make products for creatives. I have a small company and I have 10 projects going on at the same time. And so I have to be organized. The first thing I do to organize my tasks is I use Things all the time. And one thing that I love with Things is the quick capture function. You're just one shortcut away from adding a new task, a new idea to your to-do list, which is then synced to your phone. But here's how you can actually set up quick capture for your thing. Every evening before I go to bed, I do a daily check of the upcoming tasks for tomorrow. And this is a moment to reflect and think what is the priority for tomorrow and how much time will every task that I've set myself, how much time will they take? So I have this shortcut where I actually add tags to each of the tasks. And this makes organizing my day much easier afterward. Like many people, I receive hundreds of emails and I have to organize them and sift through them quickly. And so with Spark, I learned these shortcuts to basically delete, pin an email for later, delegate an email to someone, or just do it now. That's what we call the delete, defer, delegate, do method. And just not to be afraid of 100 emails. If you can sift through them quickly with these shortcuts, it's actually quite fun. And so this is how you set up these shortcuts in Spark. The goal of my days is to reach a state of flow, a state where I'm so focused into my work that I lose a sense of time, a sense of space. And whenever I reach this state of flow, basically any task that is not linked to the work that I'm doing in the flow becomes secondary. I try to completely forget just because I want to stay in the flow at all costs. I do not want to be distracted. So whenever I am in the flow, I turn off Slack, I turn off notifications, I try to keep my phone in another room, and I try to be very professional about that state of flow. Steven Pressfield, in his book, The War of Art, states that if you're in front of your computer and you're a pro, then you should just work. Having that rigor is, I think, super important. I'm a huge fan of Things 3, and one of the things you can do is set repeated tasks. So for small things that are not really habits, like working out, breathing, exercises, meditation, I have tasks that repeat on certain days. And I put all of these tasks in an automation folder. And this is great, really, for weekly reviews. So I'm going to talk about that next. My best habit to organize my time is to do weekly reviews on Sundays. These moments, these reviews, take about an hour, and I'll look back to what I did last week, what I learned, the people I met. I imagine what I want to do the next week. I break down day by day what I want to do, and this is where Things is super useful because every week gives me the same sub list of small tasks to do to get to the next week. And Day One here really makes this process of reflection super easy. And finally, Spark has this calendar feature where I can just check the next week's events without having to open Google Calendar, which is, again, very useful. Thursday is meeting day. I put all my meetings on Thursday just to make sure that I do good work during the week. And I have a Calendly link. Calendly lets you book times from other people's schedules. And my Calendly has only Thursdays as the available days. And I quickly share my Calendly link by using text snippets. And so if you want to do the same, you go into the settings, in the Mac settings, and then you put your Calendly link in the text here. And so whenever you write, it writes down the full URL, which is useful. If you like this idea, you should definitely read Paul Graham's Manager versus Maker schedule. I try not to put any alarm clock in the morning and just rise with the sun. And whenever the sun is set, I try to lower the intensity of light and not look at screens. I read this great article about being in tune with your circadian rhythm. I encourage you to read that. I'm kind of unreliable with the morning. Next, for my small company, Super Creative, I do monthly investor updates. And this sounds really serious, but in reality, I do not have investors. The goal of these emails that I send to 20 people is just to state what I'm gonna do next month and state my objectives. And the structure is always the same. I start with an action verb. I will publish, then talk about a reachable metric, something that I can measure. So I will publish 4 videos, and then I finish with a deadline. So I will publish 4 videos by May 29. And so for every objective, I follow the same structure. This monthly investor update really helps me be accountable to my objectives. Finally, on a fun note, I write these letters to myself into the future. 6 months into the future, I will say, I will have done this, and that. And it's really fun to look at these letters when I receive them. I do it with day one. And I also do a 5 years projection. So this is really just a wild guess, but again, super fun. Now for clarifying and organizing my thoughts, I use Notion a lot. Notion has databases, and I have basically 5 databases that are all linked to each other, and they all relate to the 5 big questions of what, where, when, who, and why. For the what, the first big C is for creations. It's basically all the videos, the articles that I'm going to write about, the products that I want to build. Everything is here in the creations. And this database is linked to the collaborators. And in collaborators, just put all the people that I work with and that I admire here. Next up, we have the channels. And in channels, I have all the places where I post my work. Then we have the calendar, which I use more as a timeline to have a big picture of the projects in my life right now. And finally, an important database is the criteria database. And in the criteria, it's basically a list of priorities I have, of goals, of objectives. And whenever I work on a new creation or I work with a collaborator, I want to make sure that it's aligned with my criteria for success. I want to make sure it's aligned with what I want to do in the future. And finally, I have this page called the master plan where I just focus on the how, my process, and reaching my objectives. Now, here's another cool thing I do to clarify and organize my thoughts. Once or twice a month, I do these digital Sabbaths. So one day where I cut off from all screens, phones, computers, none of that. And I lock myself into a room and I just write in a journal on paper what I have in my mind. These days are really crazy because truly 90% of my ideas of the projects that I work on emanate from these days of focus and no distractions. I don't force these digital Sabbath into my calendar. I just do them when I feel like I need to do them, when there's too much going on in my mind. Then I use day one as a learning journal. And this is a great app to just keep track of what you're learning. Anytime that I learn something interesting, I put it in my journal. And I've been doing that for 7 years. Something I did recently is I looked back to these 7 years of learning and writing what I learned. And it's crazy how little my interests have changed in 7 years. The only thing that has changed is my ability to describe what I need, what I want. So it's more clear now. But basically, I keep talking about the same ideas over and over again, but through different angles. That's kind of scary. If you're doing the same, where you're just journaling or documenting what you're learning, you'll be amazed, I think, by how much that applies to you as well, where we're just always obsessed by actually the same ideas. Whenever I work on something creative, I now capture gems. So small pieces of my work or things that inspired me or things that I learned, and I put it into a gems folder. At 6 p.m., every day I share one gem somewhere online. And this just helps me to push myself to put good, valuable content out there. And that's been a really good habit. So it might not look like that from this video, but I actually have no idea what I'll be doing in a year, in 5 years, and 10 years. And when I think about the future, I like to see it in two different ways. Either you have a plan, a map exactly of, hey, I should take this decision, I should do this in 5 years, this in 10 years, or you can have a compass. And I really like the compass approach where you'll figure it out as you go along. And a compass is basically a high-level internal rule to follow when there are hard decisions to make. My compass while I'm in my 20s is learning. Maybe when I'll be in my 30s will be building, and when I'm in my 40s will be to earn. My goal right now is to reach 1,000 YouTube subscribers. So I'm going to keep publishing videos like that. If you found this video useful, consider becoming a super creative. This was Ben from Super Creative. Have a very lovely day.